Imagine hiking into the frozen wilderness with 9 friends. Laughing, singing, the snow crunching beneath your boots, the cold air stinging your lungs. You're young, strong, full of confidence. Students, engineers, dreamers, heading toward the peaks of the Ural Mountains in the winter of 1959. The night is quiet. The wind howls faintly. The temperature sinks below -30. You set up your tent, share a meal, write in your journals, and drift to sleep, unaware that within hours, your names will be etched into one of the darkest mysteries in modern history. When rescuers found the Dyatlov Pass campsite weeks later, it was as if time itself had fractured. The tent, half buried in snow, was slashed open from the inside. Boots, jackets, food, cameras, everything scattered. No one inside. 9 young hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, had fled barefoot into the sub-zero night, leaving behind everything they needed to survive. Some would be found frozen in the snow. Others, mutilated in ways no one could explain. It began on January 23rd, 1959. 10 students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a skiing expedition toward Mount Otorten, a remote peak in the northern Urals. They were experienced, disciplined, methodical. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was a 23-year-old engineering student, precise, calm, respected. Their route, 300 kilometers of forest, frozen rivers, and mountain passes, was challenging, but not impossible. They planned to document everything, photograph every stage, return by February 12th. One member, Yuri Yudin, fell ill and turned back. It was a decision that would save his life. The remaining 9, Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, Lyuda Dubinina, Rustem Slobodin, Georgy Krivonashenko, Alexander Kolovatov, Yuri Doroshenko, Nikolai Thibault Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov continued on, unaware that they were walking into a legend that would outlive them all. Their final photographs showed laughter, strength, optimism. They built a stove from metal scraps, joked for the camera, carefully noted weather conditions. Their last campsite stood on the slope of Kolatsiakhl, Mountain of the Dead, in the local Mansi language. When they failed to return, a search party was sent out. Planes and helicopters scoured the endless white. Nothing. No movement. Only silence. Until February 26th, when rescuers spotted the tent, half collapsed, buried in snow. Inside, the scene froze them more than the wind ever could. The tent was sliced open from within, as if they'd cut their way out in panic. Inside, boots, coats, food, maps, untouched. Footprints led away from the tent, barefoot and in socks, moving calmly down the slope, not running, not stumbling, walking in single file. A kilometer down the hill, under a cedar tree, searchers found the first 2 bodies, Krivonashenko and Doroshenko, barefoot, half naked, their skin covered in strange burns, their hands torn from clawing at the bark. Between them, a small, extinguished fire. Above, branches broken meters high, as if someone had climbed in desperation to look back toward the tent. 3 more bodies lay between the cedar and the camp, Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, as if they had tried to crawl back. Their poses were twisted, faces frozen in agony. All 3 had died of hypothermia. But one, Slobodin, had a fractured skull, the kind of injury that doesn't happen from falling in snow. The remaining 4 hikers were not found until spring. When the snow melted 2 months later, a ravine revealed the final 4, Dubinina, Thibault Brignol, Kolovatov, and Zolotaryov, partially buried, eyes open, their clothing torn, their injuries catastrophic. One had a shattered skull. 2 had broken ribs and crushed chests, the kind seen in car crashes, not mountain accidents. Lyuda Dubinina was missing her tongue. No external wounds, no blood, no sign of an attack. And radiation, faint but measurable, clung to their clothes. The official reports failed to explain any of it. Theories spiraled. Avalanche, military tests, secret weapons, even something not of this world. But none fit the evidence. The tent wasn't buried, the footprints were calm, and the injuries far beyond what nature could do. Something had terrified 9 experienced hikers so completely that they tore through their own tent and fled half naked into the lethal cold. Something unseen, something powerful, something they could not fight. Even now, decades later, the Dyatlov Pass Incident remains a wound in the frozen heart of Russia. Studied, argued, and feared. The snow may have covered their tracks, but the questions remain, cold, silent, and unsolved. And it all begins inside that tent, the place where fear first took shape. When the final 4 bodies were found in May 1959, the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident turned from tragedy into something far more disturbing. The thawing snow revealed what the mountains had hidden, not just death, but terror frozen in its purest form. They were discovered deep in a ravine, 75 meters from the cedar tree where the first 2 hikers had died. Their bodies were covered by 4 meters of packed snow, preserved by the cold. Yet what investigators saw defied logic. Their injuries were unlike anything expected from exposure or even a fall. One hiker had a crushed skull. 2 others had shattered ribs and collapsed chests, damage comparable to a high-speed car crash. And yet, there were no external wounds, no bruises, no broken skin. The force that struck them had come from within, as if pressure itself had folded their bodies from the inside out. Most haunting was Lyudmila Dubinina. Her body was missing its tongue, lips, and part of her eyes. The official report attributed it to decomposition and scavenging animals. But the precision and context told a different story. Her face looked as if it had been deliberately mutilated after death, and her clothing contained traces of radioactive particles. The case files describe the scene in chilling detail. One body wearing fragments of another's clothing, sleeves torn off, socks missing, fabric showing signs of being cut with a knife. These weren't the random gestures of panic. They were choices made under unimaginable duress. Someone or something had made them run, strip, and fight for survival in temperatures that could freeze a man's breath midair. Forensic analysis revealed even more contradictions. The footprints leading from the tent were orderly and deliberate. Straight lines in the snow, no sign of chaos or pursuit. The hikers hadn't fled in terror. They'd walked calmly into the dark. The tent's inner cuts proved they'd escaped from inside. But why not use the entrance? Why destroy their only shelter? When investigators examined their diaries and photographs, they found no sign of paranoia or fear. Their final entries spoke of mundane things, cooking, weather conditions, jokes shared. The last known photograph, however, was eerie. An overexposed image of a dark figure in the snow. Distant, faceless. No one knew who took it or who the figure was. The official Soviet investigation ended with a phrase that has haunted researchers ever since. A compelling natural force. It was an explanation that explained nothing. No avalanche had occurred. The slope was too shallow, and the tent was still intact. There were no signs of military activity. though locals claim to have seen glowing orange orbs in the sky the night of the incident. Some suggested a missile test gone wrong. Others whispered about infrasound, low-frequency vibrations capable of inducing panic and disorientation. And then there were the theories that no one dared say aloud in 1959. Rumors of secret weapons, experiments, paranoia. Something unleashed in the mountains that night, powerful enough to destroy 9 lives without leaving fingerprints. The rescue teams who carried the bodies down described an oppressive silence that lingered long after they left. The Mansi tribes who lived nearby refused to approach the site again, calling it cursed. They said the mountain demanded a price that winter, and it took 9 souls. Years later, the families would still speak of the dreams that followed. Mothers waking to hear footsteps on wooden floors, fathers claiming to smell the faint trace of smoke and pine. The ghosts of the Ural expedition had never really left the mountain. They had only been buried beneath it. The Dyatlov Pass case was officially closed in May 1959. The files were sealed, the photographs classified, and the word accident stamped across the documents. But no one, not the rescuers, not the scientists, not even the soldiers, believed it. Because deep down, everyone knew the same thing. Something unnatural had happened on that mountain. Something that drove 9 people to tear open their tent and walk barefoot into a frozen wasteland. And somewhere, inside that tent, the truth still waits, sealed beneath the snow, as cold and silent as the night it began.